Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Danielle Medina. I am the program manager at Act of Random Kindness. Our mission here is to involve to meet the deepest needs of our community. We believe that while everyone deserves access to healthy food, some of our neighbors require targeted nutrition support to heal, recover, and thrive. Today, we have a special guest today. Her name is Meryl Fury. She is the president and CEO of Plant-Based Nutrition Movement and a lifelong advocate for health equity. In the 30 years of experience in public health nursing, she now focuses on the transformative power of whole food plant-based nutrition. Meryl is a visionary behind the 6 Million Seed Child Nutrition Project and a culinary medicine for sickle cell warriors. A leader within the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, she sits on multiple advisory boards and works tirelessly to bridge the gap between nutrition and wellness for the world's most vulnerable population. Meryl, welcome today.
Well, thank you so much. Pleasure to be here with you, Danielle. Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
invitation.
Oh, absolutely. We're in for quite a treat today because you have a wealth of knowledge that you can definitely share with our audience today. I want to start off with one, so you're really into educating the population about sickle cell disease, and I really want to know, I think we really want to know what exactly is sickle cell disease.
Well, that's a great place to start. Sickle cell disease is a genetic mutation that affects red blood cells, primarily affects in this country African Americans or people of African descent, but it can affect anybody. There's several different types of sickle cell disease. They all kind of fall under the entity called sickle cell disease, but there are several different specific, what we call hemoglobinopathies, the way that the genes come together to make the illness. There's several different ways that can happen. And it's not limited by color of skin. It is something that a person is born with. And thankfully, these days, we have newborn screening that can detect it at birth. So if a child is born with sickle cell disease, generally they will not see any physical manifestations of the illness until they get to maybe 6 months old. And then they can start with swelling in the hands or the joints or different body parts, pain crisis, things like this will start to show up. And then after that, as a child gets older, the disease generally progresses. It's thought that it developed sort of naturally as a mutation on purpose, sort of. You can have purposeful mutations to protect people against malaria in those tropical regions of the world where malaria is a problem. Unfortunately, while it does protect against malaria, if both the mother and the father have sickle cell trait or disease, and the child gets two genes for sickle cell in in the United States, thankfully, we have some treatments that help. But like in places like Nigeria, which is kind of the epicenter of sickle cell, a lot of those kids die by the time they're 5 from complications related to the disease. In the United States, the average sickle cell warrior will live to about the age of 52. Yeah, so it's a all over the body, very complex illness, genetic illness. And actually, I'll tell you this one other thing. It's a hemoglobinopathy. It's a problem with the red blood cells where they are shaped like sickles, right? Or like holly leaves. They're very spiky and they're rigid, they're stiff. So where regular red blood cells bounce through the circulatory system and they're pillowy and they carry oxygen and they're just, we've seen pictures of red blood cells
Yep.
looking like little sort of donuts. Sickle cells are sharp and spiky, and they tend to catch on the inside of the blood vessels and on the inside of the organs. So it becomes a problem for anywhere the blood flows. and that's everywhere.
Wow. And what inspired you to learn more about the sickle cell disease?
Well, I have sickle cell trait, which means I have, for every pregnancy that I have had, I'm done with having pregnancies, thank you very much. But for every pregnancy I've had, I had a 50% chance of passing a sickle cell gene onto my child. As a kid growing up, I didn't learn anything about sickle cell. Even in nursing school, I didn't learn anything about sickle cell beyond the fact that um, I should watch out who I choose to father my children. That was it.
Hmm.
Nothing. So I grew up thinking it was just benign. It's nothing. I can go and do and be however I want to go and do and be. And actually, there are cases where people with sickle cell trait, where they have one gene for the disease, like I have, actually die of the disease, or they lose organs, they lose their spleen, they lose a kidney, they lose, it causes, and it can cause actual cancer. There's a rare cancer that can be caused by or is associated with this disease.
Okay.
So I spend all my nursing career in public health, working with the most underserved people that we have, under-resourced people, people who have poor access to healthcare. And when I retired from nursing and I started working specifically with food as medicine, it just became really clear at some point that, first of all, I want to focus on populations that have the most challenges getting healthcare and could benefit most from knowing about food as medicine. And that people with sickle cell, until very, very recently, there were really very, very few treatments, two or three. You could go get some saline hung in the hospital. You could get a blood transfusion, usually in the hospital. You could get some pain meds. Oh, you could get chemotherapy.
Hmm.
And that's all that was available. So for people who live their lives, a lot of, in fact, sickle cell warriors, maybe 70% of them live at poverty level or just above, because the
Wow.
disease makes it very, very difficult, almost impossible to hold a job for any length of time.
Wow. That's
So as far as a population that could benefit from knowing more about food as medicine, this is a prime population.
hmm And so basically the primary population that it affects is predominantly African Americans or any
In
other
this country, yes.
population?
Um, you know, there's like I said, the disease occurs in populations that originated in places where malaria is an issue. So those tropical hot places, so maybe India, I've heard of it in the Philippines, in some of the South American, Central American, South American areas. In this country, though, it really is about 90 something percent are people of African descent.
Hmm. And would you consider that there is a neurological disparity connection with people who have sickle cell disease?
Well, there certainly can be.
Hmm
I wouldn't say it's automatic or 100% of the time. But one of the things that happens, because sickle cell is a disease of everywhere the blood flows, which is everywhere except maybe your hair, um, what will happen is, and this is, I've heard about it mostly in children, but it happens in adults too, um, strokes. Right? So as the blood flows through these tiny, 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 the micro vessels of the blood system, the sickle cell blood cells, sickled blood cells, catch on the inside of the vessels. If the person is dehydrated or the person does anything that stresses their circulation too much, like if it's too cold outside or if it's too hot outside, um, like I said, if they get dehydrated, if they go up in too high of an altitude, like Denver or somewhere in New Mexico, it'll cause the blood to sickle more. And that causes what we call polymerization. It causes the blood cells to clump and cause blockages in this micro circulation that can cause a stroke if it's in the brain. For children, they call it a silent stroke. because maybe the child was 4 or 5 years old. They're living their life. They're going to school. They're doing what they can, living with sickle cell. And maybe they're on track for their age level and their grade. And then they wake up one morning and they're different. They're quiet. They're not answering. They're, having a hard time reading or, and they call that a silent stroke.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So sad.
Yeah.
And just
The good news is though that we can do something about it. We can make their lives, they can make their lives. I don't want to say that anybody's going to fix it but them, you know,
very true.
but there are opportunities to improve the situation
And
drastically.
and that's why you're here,
Yeah.
because there is hope, right? There's always
Right.
hope. Now, I want to move on to food, right? Because we all need food and food can be very healing to the body. Can you talk about some of the vitamins and the minerals in specifically plant-based foods, and how does it help stop or maybe improve some of the sickle shaping that you've been talking about for the cells?
Yeah. So the sickle shaping really, I mean, you understand it's a genetic thing. It happens with or with regardless of what you eat, first of all. And one other thing I'll throw in there about the sickle shaping, even somebody like me with just one gene for it, about maybe 50% of my blood cells are sickled, right? Okay. So it's important that people with sickle cells stay hydrated, drink water. Skip the caffeinated beverages, skip the energy drinks, skip the red dye number 40 colored sugary things, you know, water, herbal tea. I will also say herbal tea is good. Okay, black tea here and there. Okay, fine. Coffee, okay, we get it. But water is the most important thing. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. That's one thing. Hydration alone can reduce the likelihood of a sickle cell crisis, which is where those blood cells clump up and you start getting pain somewhere in the body. That's one thing. Another thing that is strongly recommended is to eat foods that will help the blood vessels relax and open, right? So we're looking for foods that help generate nitric oxide, the gas that helps the blood vessels relax, right? So it could be something like beets. Now, beets have a bad reputation. Nobody wants to be eating beets at dinner time. It's like, but they're wonderful. Learn how to prepare them in ways that are delicious. And yes, that exists, and that can help relax the blood vessels. Also, green leafy vegetables are known to help produce that nitric oxide um, to help the blood vessels relax. There's also watermelon is good. Cucumbers are good. Seeds like pumpkin seeds, nuts like, almonds and filberts and those kind of things also have the building blocks for nitric oxide. So those are
Mhm.
some of the things that we recommend. Fiber, of course, always fiber. So there are a couple things that people with sickle cell um, typically struggle with as a direct impact of the disease. One is systemic inflammation. So we talk about eating more anti-inflammatory foods, so more vitamin C, more brightly colored, get in that eat the rainbow mentality. Reds, yellows, oranges in fruits and vegetables are wonderful. Also the dark purples and the blues, right? All those phytonutrients. They struggle with inflammation. They also struggle with oxidative stress, which is kind of like hand in hand with inflammation, right? And the same thing, recommend antioxidant vegetables and fruits. The other thing that they struggle with is hypermetabolism. And this is this driving need the body does. It needs more calories and more protein. This is a result of part of the disease process causes these sickled blood cells to break down, rupture way faster than normal red blood cells. Normal red blood cells break down about every 110 to 120 days. Sickle cell breaks down every 10 to 20 days. So there's a high need for rebuilding all the time. And then with the, like I mentioned, the damage that goes on in the tissues, it can be in the eyes. Blindness is an issue. Um, can be dental problems are an issue, stomach problems, all of that. Uh, so the body is in this constant, like, demolition, I'll call it, and renovation. It's all
Mm.
day long, every day, even on the weekend, all night, right? It's going on all the time. So anything that we can do to build up the calorie and the protein intake, as well as the phytonutrients, the micronutrients, the B vitamins, fiber, all of it, all of
Mhm.
it. The body needs all of it. So there's no room for empty calories. There's no room for energy drinks that are just gonna, like, get you cranking and not give you anything back. There's no room for Kool-Aid. There's no room for Twinkies. There's no room for Twizzlers. In my opinion, there's only really best practice is to eat as nutritious and nutrient dense diet as you can.
Meryl, what you're saying makes so much sense in just in general, right? For general health as well, right? I mean, eliminating the ultra processed foods is very important for anyone's health, right? And exactly what you're saying about really loading up on all of the nutrient dense foods is so important. And especially for people who have sickle cell disease, if their cells are, that the blood cells are only lasting for 10 days. Wow.
No kidding. Wow.
Wow.
It's like
Uh,
mind-boggling,
that
right?
is mind-boggling, I have to say.
Yeah.
And the hypernourishment that this person is going to need, talking about hydration, I
Yes.
think there was a study that came out recently, and I believe it was less than half of Americans get their daily requirements for just water.
Just
Just
water.
water.
Yeah. Yeah. We
So
so strongly believe that it should be a bright color and it should be sweet, you know,
yes.
or it can be dark. It could be a cola, right?
Right,
But
right.
we have this idea that I don't like water. How many people do you hear say that? I don't like water. Mm-mm, no,
Mm.
it has no flavor. Mm-mm.
Yes.
Yeah, well, yeah, something that we really ought to be training our children early to drink water. Do the formula, the take your body weight in pounds,
Yeah.
cut it in half, and that's the number of ounces to drink a day. Just use that as a guideline. Do as best as you can to approach that unless you have some other reason not to, that your doctor
Mm,
told you, like you've got kidney disorder or something like that. But
absolutely.
water is so important.
So important. Now let's talk about some of the pain management, right? So
Mm.
for someone who has sickle cell or even someone who does have pain in their bodies, what are some of the foods that can help with, and I'm thinking this is inflammation in the body.
A lot.
So what would you say that can help them?
That is just my favorite question. I love looking at that. I just love it. So for inflammation, yes. So there's two sides to that equation, at least two sides, right? There's what we're eating, and then there's what we should avoid, right? So if we could avoid white sugar, refined flours, ultra processed foods, animal products, including cheese and dairy, right? Poor quality oils, seed oils and things. Just a lot of that makes the body, more acidic and increases the inflammation in the body, right? That's well established through research. So that's one thing. Um, Now, on that note, like I said, many people who have sickle cell disease, and this in the country in general, this is a general, I'm just make this a sweeping generalization. Many neighborhoods all across the country, if you have a restaurant, it's going to be a fast food restaurant. And those kind of foods increase your likelihood of systemic inflammation, right? So that's one thing. If we could carve that whole section of the food spectrum out, we'd be doing ourselves a world of good. So that's one thing. And then what you eat, because what you eat actually is can be like this sort of inner bathing of the body in antioxidants and anti-inflammatories. It's also giving you the phytonutrients and it's giving the fiber, it's giving all the micronutrients that the body uses to heal. So, what would you eat? Well, certainly we already talked about water, flush the toxins from the body. Also, citrus fruits, right? So lemons and limes and oranges, pineapples, I'll put that in there, grapefruit, mangoes, any of those tropical, bright colored fruits are great. Papaya, any of those. There's so many, right? Tropical fruits are
Love it.
wonderful. Um, Leafy green vegetables, of course, right? Always. They're all of these fruits and vegetables are great for capturing the free radicals that are roaming around the body, wreaking havoc with the cell membranes, the healthy cell membranes. So those are important. For if you like specifics, so here's a really quick recipe. You want a recipe?
Ooh, yes, please share.
So we just did this cooking demo a couple weeks ago with our sickle cell group, and it was to prepare a beet salad, right? I talked about beets before. People just don't like them. But steamed beets cut bite size with tangerines or mandarin oranges, some red onion. Red onion has quercetin that helps with inflammation, right? Let's see what else is in there. Carrots, right? So you get your beta carotene, that also helps. It has pumpkin seeds and sunflower seeds that helps with the relaxing of the blood vessels. What else was in there? Lemon juice and a little bit of maple syrup or agave. You choose your liquid sweetener there. I would not recommend white sugar. Okay. Um, Mix that all together. I'm trying to think of golden raisins. And there, you can Google, I think it would be called Moroccan beet salad. If you Google that, there's lots of recipes online. I added tangerines. You can also add cucumber if you want. And then they throw in parsley and cumin, ground cumin seed. Lovely, lovely. So soothing for the digestive system and for the blood system. I would also say, okay, that was my recipe. Okay, move that to the side now. Next thing you could do is Indian food is freaking awesome. I love it. There's nothing like a curry that already has the turmeric and the cinnamon and the ginger and maybe some whatever else is in there. I can't even think right now. But those three in particular are anti-inflammatory, right? And they work beautifully together. There's such a synergy with them. Put a little black pepper to increase the pop on the turmeric, and you're doing great. Onion is another one. Garlic is another one. There's so many. There's so
Oh,
many. But almost any plant food that I have looked at, I can't think of any. I'm
mm.
sure somebody could write in and say, yes, I know one. But I can't think of any right now that are not helpful for inflammation and oxidative stress.
That sounds like a delicious recipe, and I am going to try that one for sure. I
Well, actually,
love,
I'll send it to you if you'd like to include it with your show
yeah,
notes. You certainly can. I'll
yes.
send it to you.
Oh, that would be amazing. Absolutely. Because this really sounds like a wonderful recipe. And I think that our audience would really appreciate that. And I would appreciate that too,
Yeah,
just to try it
yeah.
and love some, really amazing salads. So I'm going to say, because this happens a lot with my clients, they'll say, I just can't afford to eat this way. What would you say if someone said, eating healthy means I gotta spend so much money, right? Where I can just go and get a dollar meal or a $5 meal,
$5 meal now, yeah.
right? So what would you say to people who feel that way?
There's a couple different things that come to mind for that. First of all, eating fruits and vegetables is still about the least expensive selections you can get in the grocery store. Beans and rice. Now, I don't mean to make that a cliche. It's not right. I eat beans every day. Every day. I just had white bean and kale soup for breakfast, right? That's what was on the menu today. Um, so beans and rice, really economical. If you buy a 1 pound bag of beans, what's that? $1.49. At least that's what it is around here. Even if you're not inclined to cook the beans yourself, you can get a can of beans for somewhere between 99 and $1.49, depending upon what you buy and where you're located in the country. So beans and grains, whole grains, are very inexpensive, very affordable. You can buy a container of oatmeal, certainly at least as big as my head, for not a lot of money. Um, you could throw in some cinnamon, and that helps with the antioxidant part and the inflammation part. And so eating this way, in my opinion, is not very expensive at all. Where it gets expensive is if you want to buy something that's in a flashy package and it says 100% plant-based and it's got all kinds of advertising around it and nice little buzzwords. That's where you're going to start paying money. You'll also start paying money if you're going to the most exclusive health food store in town. Well, yeah, you're going to pay for it. You're going to
Yes.
pay, right? You're going to pay because they got to keep their overhead running and they got to make their store worthy of that exclusive label. But if you go to something like the local Central American store, Mexican store, Indian store, Middle Eastern store, they got grains and beans all day long, not expensive at all, right? So that's what I would say with that. The other thing I would add about this way of eating as being expensive, you will have some initial investment for buying spices, maybe, right? The different, more exotic flavors, maybe a set of Indian spices or South American spices or North African spices if you're feeling inclined to be a little adventurous with your flavor profiles. That might cost you a little bit, but you're only going to buy them once in every 4 or 5 months. Maybe you might keep them for longer than that, depending upon how you do. So it's that part can be expensive, but it's not every week. It's not every month. It might not even be every year. The other thing is when you look at the toll that eating the standard American diet has on the body, when we realize that the ultra processed and the high meat intake and the cheese and the artificial colors and the ultra, just all of it, the forever chemicals that are floating in our waters and now, floating everywhere. Those foods, those chemicals, those compounds cause disease in the body. This is well documented. Those are not foods, in fact, right? They are fake food like imposter substances. So they make us sick over time. And by the time you get to be 40 or 50 or 60 and you're having your first or second heart attack and you're developing diabetes and you've got high blood pressure and you've got eczema and you've got whatever you've got, gout, how much are we spending then? How much productivity have we lost because of our diet, right? Because the medications and the trips to the doctor and the trips to the hospital, and that takes a toll emotionally, physically, financially, psychologically. So to me, eating a health promoting diet is an investment. I am 65 years old. I do
Mhm.
not have any chronic illnesses, have a couple allergies. That's it. I don't take any medications. I don't need to go to a doctor more than once in a year, maybe once
Yeah.
every 2 years. That's
Yeah.
it. And that is a
Well,
result of the food and this lifestyle.
Meryl, you have described this in such a way that I think it is very impactful. When you talked about supporting local grocery stores, ethnic grocery stores that do carry this, and I have seen it myself in different parts of the neighborhood where there are so many different whole, like you can get whole grains and tons of different beans. I mean, I don't know if anybody realizes it, but you can get more than red and black beans, right? There's
White beans, right?
white beans, right? There's so many other beans that you could actually get. And then most of them are in these types of stores rather than your, glamorous types of stores that a lot of people go to. And support your local grocers and really
Yes.
give the
And
money back.
your local farmers market, go
Yes,
there too.
exactly,
Most definitely.
exactly.
Yeah.
And when you broke it down into saying how it actually, what you are feeding your body now, once you get to a certain age, you'll see the impact, you'll see the results, and that will lower or increase your health costs, right? So you are actually saving money if you are eating this type of diet. But we don't think about that, right? We're
No,
always
we
thinking
don't.
about the now, what's happening like right now.
Exactly.
And it's good to be present. I'm not saying it's not, we should always be present, but when you're thinking of health, right, it does matter what you're doing right at this moment in and moving forward. So I hope that anybody who's watching this and listening to this really thinks about that, right? What you just said, that it's what you're doing now that can affect what's going to happen later in life.
Yeah. You
So,
know, I'd like to put in a plug right there too, because you and I both work with children, and it's just so important that I want us to take this and I want to share this with your audience. The same is true for children. It's absolutely 100% true for children. So if we can start them on a path of eating lots of fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, whole grains, beans, mushrooms, we'll prevent a lot of these illnesses and these upsets and these challenges that kids have. There is a connection between a child being able to sit and focus in school and the quality of the food that they receive. This is all documented. I'm not saying anything nobody has talked about or proven before. But if you feed your child foods, and I know we're all doing the best we can. I'm not trying to point fingers at anybody. It's just when we know better, we can do better, right? So if we're feeding our children highly sugary cereals and things like toaster pastries and donuts and muffins, I mean, that keeps the child sort of happy in the 10 minutes that they're eating it. And then their body begins the processing and the dealing with it. And that's where the child starts to get compromised, and then it becomes hard to focus in school. And maybe they're maybe a little bit mm, not so well behaved. And maybe they're saying things in outbursts that you wouldn't want them to say. And they're, hitting other children, or they're, throwing things, or whatever they're doing. Maybe they're falling asleep. That's a whole nother story, right? But to feed them food that supports them, you know, is really important for the right now and for the long term.
hmm,
And
I love
that is an investment worth making.
love that. Well, this has been a really wonderful conversation. I've learned a lot, and I hope that for our audience who is listening, I hope that this really makes more sense to you after when you're thinking about food as a healing property and really all of the things that it does for your body. And whether you have sickle cell disease or whether you have cancer or heart disease or any of this, right? I mean, this message applies to pretty much anyone, right?
Yes, I'd say 100% of the people who eat.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's all of us. That includes the entire world. Wow, wow. All right, Meryl, I'm so happy that we had this conversation. And do you want to just let our audience know where they can find you or anything that's up and coming? We want to definitely be involved in what you're doing.
Yes, absolutely. So our website is probably the best place to find us, although we're in the process of sort of getting that reorganized because there's an awful lot of information and resources and things like that. Plant-based nutrition movement has been around now for 8 years.
Wow.
Wow, that's amazing. And yeah, so our website is pbnm.org, or you could Google plant-based nutrition movement if that's easier. So that tells us a lot about what we're up to. We have a newsletter and a blog and resources and recipes and all kinds of things on there. Also, it talks about the programs that we have coming up. So we have our 6 Million Seeds project, which is about child nutrition. We have More Plants on Plates. That's about child nutrition in schools in particular. And then we have the culinary medicine for sickle cell warriors, which is also listed there. As far as what's coming up, in the end of May, we have a 4 session series in person that we'll be doing, like a jumpstart for sickle cell warriors and their support system. So that'll be held in Chicago at a church in Chicago. So if you're interested in that, you can look for that on the website also. If you're in Chicago, by all means, please register. It is a free 4 week jumpstart, and we'd be happy to tell you more about that and invite you into that. And then we have, over the course of the coming year, we'll be also putting on our social media pages about like standalone online courses that we'll be doing for sickle cell and other illnesses. Because sickle cell is unique, but the food is similar for a lot of other disease
Right.
processes that have inflammation as a problem. So we'll have individual sessions that will be advertising during the year for that. So just look
Wonderful.
for us. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook and LinkedIn. Yeah, just look for plant-based nutrition movement.
And we'll include that in the notes as well.
Perfect.
So I want to just thank you once again for coming. And it's always, again, lovely to talk to you. And we go back with all of our work together. So it's wonderful to have you on this platform.
Well, thank you, Danielle. My
Thank,
pleasure. And like I said, thanks for the invitation. Always great to
absolutely.
talk to you.
Well, I'm Danielle Medina of Act of Random Kindness, and we hope that you enjoyed this session. Give it a like, and we will be having a whole lot more for you to see. Take care, everyone.